Today we are looking at Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Ecclesiastes chapter 12. This is the last chapter in this book. And what we're going to see here is Solomon giving an outline of what he recognizes as being the sum total of what we're going to experience. He's bringing out that everybody at some point in time will experience some of this, or a lot of this, or all of this, depending on your stage and condition in life. And it's important to recognize and to a certain degree, prepare for. Think about it, right? Allow yourself, we'll elaborate on some of that as we go through it. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get the reading in. I think it would be helpful. I want you to pay close attention to some of the metaphorical and allegorical language that is being used here, and see if you can pick it up while we're listening to it. But when we go through it verse by verse, I will explain it to you how most of the commentators and how I do believe the Spirit of God has outlined this. So let's take a listen. Ecclesiastes chapter 12.
Chapter 12. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. While the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets, when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Also when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be a burden, and desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. Or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, all is vanity. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yea, he gave good heed, and sought out, and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth. The words of the wise are as goads, and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. And further, by these, my son, be admonished. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it be good, or whether it be evil.
All right, and with that, we are now at the end of the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, did you pick up on some of the metaphorical language that Solomon pointed out here? I think his point in bringing out the metaphorical language was to help us to kind of dig a little bit. He could have made it very plain, but he didn't. What I would like to do here, if you guys don't mind, I want to play from the Amplified Bible. I was going to do it at the end, but I think I'm going to do it now at the beginning, and allow you to hear how the Amplified Bible breaks out some of the metaphorical language. I think that would be helpful to hear. We'll go through it as well individually, but take a listen to this.
Chapter 11. Cast thy...
Ecclesiastes 12. Remember earnestly also your Creator, that you are not your own, but his property now, in the days of your youth, before the evil days come, or the years draw near, when you will say of physical pleasures, I have no enjoyment in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened, sight is impaired, and the clouds of depression return after the rain of tears. In the day when the keepers of the house, the hands and the arms tremble, and the strong men, the feet and the knees bow themselves, and the grinders, the molar teeth, cease because they are few, and those who look out of the windows, the eyes are darkened. When the doors, the lips are shut in the streets, and the sound of the grinding of the teeth is low, and one rises up at the voice of a bird and the crowing of a cock, and all the daughters of music, the voice and the ear are brought low. Also, when the old are afraid of danger from that which is high, and fears are in the way, and the almond tree, their white hair blooms, and the grasshopper, a little thing, is a burden, and desire and appetite fail, because man goes to his everlasting home, and the mourners go about the streets or marketplaces. Remember your Creator earnestly now before the silver cord of life is snapped apart, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern, and the whole circulatory system of the blood ceases to function. Then shall the dust, out of which God made man's body, return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return to God who gave it. Vapor of vapors, and futility of futilities, says the preacher. All is futility, emptiness, falsity, vainglory, and transitoriness. And furthermore, because the preacher was wise, he, Solomon, still taught the people knowledge, and he pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought acceptable words, even to write down rightly words of truth or correct sentiment. The words of the wise are like prodding goads, and firmly fixed in the mind like nails are the collected sayings which are given as proceeding from one shepherd. But about going further than the words given by one shepherd, my son, be warned. Of making many books there is no end, so do not believe everything you read, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. All has been heard. The end of the matter is, fear God. Revere and worship him, knowing that he is, and keep his commandments. For this is the whole of man, the full original purpose of his creation, the object of God's providence, the root of character, the foundation of all happiness, the adjustment to all inharmonious circumstances and conditions under the sun, and the whole duty for every man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it is good or evil.
All right. Now, you see, with the Amplified Bible, they spell out a little bit more some of the metaphorical aspects. So, what is Solomon talking about here?
Life.
What stage in life?
The end.
Yeah. And what is the progression? He's talking about getting old. Those steps that all of a sudden happen. You know, I heard one comedian say that when he was young, when he was in his 20s, if he got hurt because he was in some kind of an accident. Either he was running and he fell, or he got hit by a stick, or he stumped his toe, and he knows why he has pain. He said, but then when he turned 50, he would just wake up and he would have pain and have no idea why. Pain would just show up. And that's what Solomon is talking about here. You're going to get a visit from all of these circumstances at the point when you get old. That same comedian was talking about how he was walking and he had a cast on his side. And his friend said, what happened to you? You got hit by a car or nothing? He goes, no, I stood up and I yawned too heavy. He stretched out all his ligaments on the side, because when you get older, you can't do all that quick motion and doing stuff and think that, well, your body is not going to just allow you to do it. Pain comes in. And that's why in the beginning I said that when we look at what Solomon is saying, if we make precautions to prepare, then you might be able to have some of this to not affect you as traumatically as he's explaining it. And what he's basically saying is you better know that your body is not going to be 21 always. You better do something. All right. Keep going to McDonald's in your when you're in your teens and your 20s, but if you keep going when you're in your 40s and 50s, guess what's going to happen?
We'll have some
You're
problems.
going to have some problems. He talked about, your inner pipes and everything. All that stuff is going to be a problem. We'll get to that. And so he's bringing out, and I think he's doing this in metaphorical purposes. The reason why he's not saying eyes or teeth, and he's saying the light and grinders, I think he's being somewhat comical here. I think Solomon is bringing this out in a more tongue-in-cheek format, kind of laughing at his own self as he's getting older. And I think that's one of the ways that we should look at. You can't get mad because a 25-year-old person can run down the street for 4 or 5 hours in a row and don't feel tired. And when you in your 40s and 50s and 60s and older, you can't do it. Don't get mad at the young folk because they can do it. Just laugh. Yeah, I used to be able to do it. Can't do it now. But, you got to find a way to be okay with it. And I think that's why Solomon uses such metaphorical language here to help us to recognize it's okay. It's okay to get old. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't get mad at yourself because you can't do what you used to do when you were 25. Thank God that you got to the stage and that you can still, think and remember and reminisce about the goodness of the Lord and all that. But you can't go and run up the stairs like you used to. You can't do the backflips. Remember all them little somersaults and cartwheels and things we used to do when we were younger? I watched my grandkids. They over here, Grandpa, watch this. And they flip, 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 flip. They flip all over the place.
You can't do that?
Didn't you just see me do it? That's about all I'm gonna do. You know why? Because I want to be able to still do a little bit with them, but I ain't flipping up and running up and down like they do. And then they run and fall down. They cry for a minute, but they get back up and they're good and going.
Mm-hmm.
I watch them. They get a little scar on their arm. We put a little something on it. Put a little Band-Aid on it. The next day, the scar's gone. I cut myself. This thing stayed there for 4 months. I'm like, when is this thing going to heal? You keep putting stuff on there. It's like a tattoo now.
Yeah.
it don't
That's
go
right.
away.
That's right.
Yeah.
I still see all of the needles that they put in me with all the IVs. I was so dumb.
Yeah, that's the stuff don't heal.
Still
I
there.
asked my sister Barbara said, did I burn myself? She said, no, that's where they had the IV in you. I said, wow, it looked like a big burn marker.
Yeah, well, you get them old age tattoos. That's what they call.
Yeah.
And you can tell. Yeah, I got this one here when I scraped myself against that tree. Oh, look, how long ago was that? That was 8 months ago. It's still there. Still pulling.
Knees all burnt up from where my egg dragging from in between the bed and the dresser.
Mm-hmm.
I said, how did my knees get like this? She said, I'm sorry, Miss Wayne, but I had to drag you out.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, okay. The scab just fell off. This happened 2 months ago.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the purpose of Solomon doing this. I think with his wisdom that God gifted him with, and he had a gift of wisdom, that he recognized the best way to talk about old people getting old is to talk about it with a smile, with a sense of be happy, be glad, be old, and you know what? Yeah, I'm in my 30s, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s, I'm in my 60s, I'm in my 70s. Whatever you in, say it with pride. And just go on about your business. I made it to 60. I made it to 70. My mom celebrated her 80th birthday last November. She made it to 80. She was happy. She's up walking around doing what she got to do, And I put on some old Soul Train for her. I'm like, I remember that's how y'all used to be back in the day. And you got to find the peace with it. Because if you don't find it, you have seen people that do not find peace with them getting old. And they do all kinds of stuff to themselves. And before you know it, he's like, what done happened to them? They look, in my opinion, they look worse than they did if they would have just aged gracefully. They're trying to do a whole lot of stuff. And I'm not saying don't do something. There's some things that you do. I try to, I don't let my beard grow crazy like it wants to go. I try to trim it up, make it look nice, best I can, you know. And you know, you do what hairstyle works best when your hair only growing in certain places. Well, you know what? Let's cut it all off. Let's just do it like that. You find a way. But the point really is be graceful. Acknowledge that this is going to happen and move along with it. Go smoothly and gracefully, dancing into your twilight years, knowing that God is still with you. And this is what Solomon is bringing out here. So let's look at what he says here. First thing he starts off, the first word he uses is remember. And I think that's an important word. It's important because there's nothing like good memories when you were younger, when you were able to do, and when you did do. He said, remember now thy creator in the days of your youth, of thy youth. It's recognizing that God blessed you to be able to live, and you went through your youth, and now you're in your middle age or your senior years, and thinking about the things that you did. And sometimes just sitting around with your family and y'all talking about how things were when y'all were growing up, it brings joy, doesn't it? You sit there and laugh about some of the things that you used to do, and all the little things y'all got into. You kind of giggle and laugh, but that's all part of it. And what does remembering do? It helps to make you know that you have had a full life. You've gone through. And not all of it was good while you were going through it. But then when you look back on it now and you laugh at it, you say, well, that was a mess. But boy, I tell you, we did this and we did that. But somehow or another, God saw us through. All right. I sit around here sometimes, me and Miss Penny, and our kids now, you know, all our kids are grown. I mean, Ariel, she'll be 21 this year. And but we're sitting there with the other ones that are grown, and they're sitting around talking about all the stuff they used to do. They talking about, yeah, well, remember when we used to jump out the window? I'm like, jump out the window? When did y'all jump? I'm looking at my wife. I'm like, I don't. She goes, no, I don't remember nobody jumping out the window. And they were like, yeah, Mom, Dad, we ain't tell y'all nothing about that. That's one of the games we used to play. We see if we can jump out the window on the front yard. On the front yard. Oh, so all the neighbors knew you jumped out the window, huh?
Right.
All we could do is look at it and we laugh and giggle. But what are we doing? We're remembering the fullness of life. And we're talking about all the things that, you know, that what our children, we had to do for this particular one. There was one we had to go and get for that, and another one we had to do this for. And it's like, you talk about all of the issues that they got into that we had to deal with. And it's all past now. It wasn't fun when you had to do with it, but now you giggle and you laugh about it. And that's what Solomon is saying. He says, remember thy creator. Remember how God has blessed you in the days of your youth. And he says this, well, look, while the evil days come not. All right. So if you are young, think about God, because guess what? He called these days, what did he call them? Evil. Why are they evil? Because they are the results of sin. Why do we get old? Why do we eventually go back to the dust, as it says here in verse 7 of this chapter? Because the Lord told us that in the day you eat of the fruit, you shall what? You shall die. And when you die, you're going back to the dust. So we're all heading that way. We're all going down that same road. We're all at different stages. We're all at different points. But that's where we're heading. So we have to recognize, Lord, I understand your plan, and I'm not going to fight against the plan. All right. And so when things start happening, I recognize
you can fight against it. You're still going.
You're going to go. All right.
Yeah, you know that was funny because the last time that I went to the hospital, I went to the rehab.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara came to see me in the hospital. I said, Barbara, tell me too, am I dying?
Mm-hmm.
And I started crying. She said, no, you're not dying. I said, Barbara, you got to tell me the truth. Don't lie to me.
Mm-hmm.
She said, Wayne, you're not dying. You're not dying.
Mm-hmm.
No, because, I said, well, if I'm dying, I'm ready.
All right.
No, I said, I done made my peace. I'm ready. She said, no, you're not dying. He's not ready for you. I said, oh, okay. And from there, I went on to the rehab, and I told everybody in there, I said, listen to me. If there's something going on with me, I need to know. Don't come in here and beat around the bush. You know, tell me straight up. I said, I don't want nobody in here lying to me. You know?
And look at you now. Here you are.
Right.
All
Right. No, you know, like I said, you know, when I was in there and I was on the therapy, like I said, this right side, you know, they all told me you'll never be able to use this right side again. You know, when I got there, the guy King, I can ball my fist up.
All right.
He said, no. He said, there's nothing. He said, nothing's dead. He said, they just didn't do anything with it. You know?
Yeah.
So that, like I said, you know, it's getting better. It's not there. But I know now I can use it.
I see you moving it. I see you doing it.
Yeah. So, you know, like I said, things getting better. Just like the Ada had today, you know, she said, because she went to the laundromat, and I thought Barbara just gonna show what a laundromat was. Her and Barbara did the laundry. They was going about an hour. I said, because she came in, I said, what you doing here? She says, oh, I'm done. Because she came in at 12. I figured, you know, they wouldn't be done until about 3, 4 o'clock. Man, it was 2 o'clock and they was back. I said, wow.
All right. That's...
You know? But yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, man, you know, I can see how God is working in my life, man. You know, before I couldn't see it, but it's just so clear. You know, it's just so clear. Like I was telling, you know, like I said, it seems like all my doctors that I have, they always say, we will get you right. They don't say, I'll get you right. They say, we will get you right.
The whole army.
Yeah, they you know, all of them talk. They don't just say God. They say, we will get you right. You know? And that's like with all, like my heart doctor.
Yeah.
He says, okay, he says, you don't need this and you don't need that. That's why you falling out.
And
you know, because remember I told you all I didn't want to take that medicine with codeine in it.
Yep.
But I was taking it, and all of a sudden, it started getting me high, and I didn't know it. So when I would get up at night to use the bathroom, and I sit in a wheelchair, that's when I would pass out and I'd fall out the chair. It hasn't happened since he took me off that medicine.
And that's what you need. You need a team, and you need you know, an aspect of what you are targeting, what you're trying to do, and know what works and what doesn't work. And that's what Solomon is pointing out here. He's saying there's going to be some things that you're going to have to make some adjustments. You're going to have to find out, because you're not going to be able to do in your golden years what you did in your youth. But he says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days. And like I said, he called these days evil because it's part of the curse that's upon us. This is why we break up. This is why we fall apart. This is why things don't work the way they used to. And we start going downhill from a physical standpoint, and a lot of times even from a mental standpoint. And we're going to see even emotionally. We're going to see that here. Solomon didn't leave out too much of anything. Look what he says here. He says, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. And what you'll recognize is that I'm not able to have as much enjoyment doing some of the things I used to do. Going up the stairs is not as easy. Taking those long walks like I used to. You know, you take the long walks when you were younger. You come home, take a shower, you're good. When you're a little older, you take those long walks. You got to do something for the little aches and the pains that show up. All right. What was
I'm
that?
sorry I'm late, guys. Good morning. Good evening.
Good evening, Tony. No
Glad
problem.
to have you.
We're on Ecclesiastes chapter 12.
Hey, Jones.
All right. Ecclesiastes chapter 12. And Solomon's talking about getting old. That's what we're dealing with. All right. And so he says that you're going to have no pleasure in it. I mean, if we all had the choice, do I want to have the strength I had when I was 25, 35, or the strength when you like, yeah, I would love to have that kind of strength. But the deterioration, the breakdown. Now, what can you do? Are there things that you can do to lessen it? Certainly. Eat right. Get plenty of exercise. Keep your mind stimulated. Always trying to learn. A lot of things you can do to try to help yourself as you go through this stage, because we're all going through it, every one of us. And then so he brings it out some more. And like I said, he's using the metaphors because he's trying to say it in a comical way. This is a song, but it's also a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek. And he says, while the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened. All right. What is he talking about? Your ability to see. All right. Now, you look, how many of us here tonight is wearing spectacles? We got glasses. I didn't always have glasses. When I was in high school, in high school they used to do the eye checks in school back in the day, and I was told I had better than perfect vision. I had 20/15 vision, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm never gonna have to wear glasses." Well, here I am now, and it's like I remember when Haywood had a bookstore. And hey, you remember that little teeny Bible I bought? It was one of those little pocket Bibles. It was a full Bible, full Genesis to Revelation, but the print was so tiny. And he was like, "You can read that Bible?" I was like, "Man, please, I can read this Bible." I was reading it, and I could use that Bible for a long time. But I recognized one day I looked at the Bible and it was like, ooh, all of a sudden it wasn't looking as clear. And
you want some money back now?
No,
bring it back?
I still have the Bible. But now I have the large print version,
Oh yeah, that's what I got.
And all you can do is do like Solomon, laugh at it.
That's right.
Don't get mad. Just look at it and go, you know what? It's okay. It's just my time to do this. Put on the spectacles.
All my sisters, all of them wore glasses. I said, man, y'all can't see. I used to tell Barbara when Barbara was working, when I used to sit back here, she said, you can read that? And I'd be over, in the corner. And she'd have to get up and read. I said, Barbara, you can't see? She said, no. The next time when I went back to the doctor's, and I was looking, she said, wait, you can? I said, no, I can't see that, Judy. She said, let me send you to the eye doctor. Now, you see, I got glasses on.
That's it. That's all part of it.
I can't see. I mean, I can see, but I can't. I can see far away, but close up, I don't know why I can't see. If I take my glasses off, I can't see the writing in the box.
Yeah, that's exactly where I am. If I'm looking at something close, I need the glasses. Now I'm looking over here. If I look across at my wife, then there's no problem. But the point that he's bringing out is that your days are going to be affected, whether you're looking at moonlight, starlight, sunlight, you're going to be affected. And he says, nor the clouds return after the rain. Right? And so you're going to have, okay, I feel like I knew I was about to do something, but I can't remember what it was. The clouds were here, but did it rain? You don't remember. So your memory begins to fall. You ever get up and go into a room and you know that what you wanted was in the room, but you have no idea why you in there? I got up. I purposely got up and came in here to get some, and the thing or the object that you want to do is there. It's there. And it's probably just looking at you going, you came in here for me, but you don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And now you got to go back out and try to okay, let me sit down and see. Maybe if I sit back down, maybe I'll remember what I went in there to get. And so,
No, you start to go and do something else, and then you're like, oh, that's what I was doing.
That's
and you
it.
stop that, and you run to that.
Right. And
Yeah.
then you forget that, too.
That's it.
My cousin Carl, he said, you see when you get older.
Yep.
I said, man, just because it happened to you, don't mean it's gonna happen to me.
No, we
now
all.
I can be sitting there, and I asked Barbara, what's today?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I said, she told me today. I said, no, I don't want to know the date. I want to know what day it is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know?
But
I'm telling you, I call her every day, and I ask her, Barbara, what's today? She said, Wayne, you watching TV? I said, yeah. She said, just hit the guide button, and then to tell you what even give you the date.
Give me your address. I'm gonna get you a calendar.
No, I got calendars. I'm looking at the calendar right here. I got a calendar right on my table.
But that's the point where
you gotta check it off at night when you go to sleep. You check it off, and then you know the next day in the morning. All right, now we on Wednesday.
Now that's the thing.
You know how to clock in on church stuff.
Even with my pill bottle, it got all the days up there. So now I said, well, when I take the pills out, I know what day it is. So.
And you got the point that is you got to have a plan to recognize that these things are going to come. What do I do to help myself? Mm-hmm. Like Beverly said, get you a calendar or whatever it is. And we're going to see a lot of different things here, and we're going to point out some of the things that you can do. You can't stop it, but you can help it. You can help make it a little bit better.
Off.
So when you can't see, what do? Go get you some glasses. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right.
Just like my buddy.
All right.
I told him, I said, hey, I can't find a calendar nowhere. As soon as I get a calendar, here he comes. He said, well, I got you. And I said, hey, well, you know what? I got two now. This will be the third one.
All right. Well,
I couldn't find a calendar. Brought me a calendar.
Well, now you just got to start marking them off. Like Beverly said, just mark them down.
Check it off.
Mm-hmm. Now look at what he says. Now he ain't done. He's gonna hit a whole lot of stuff here. Look at verse 3. In the day when the keeper of the house shall tremble, and the strong men, not strong man, strong men. That means it's more than one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few. And those that look out of the window be darkened. All right. What is he laughing at now? What is he picking on now? In the day when the keeper of the house, what's the keeper of the house? That's your legs. When the legs give out. I used to be able to run, jump, stand, kick. Can't do all that anymore. And why? Because it says the keeper of the house are what? Trembling. You're not steady as you used to be. And the strong men. What are these strong men? It speaks about the shoulders. Why? Because they shall bow themselves. And so sometimes when you get older and you see people getting kind of hunchback, they kind of bend over like. And so when the strong men bow themselves. And so you can imagine Solomon in his day saying this and him talking, and the people are just giggling and laughing. That's right. I saw somebody stand erect. And that's why you can go to the doctor when you're 23, and you could be 5'10" and go down when you're 53, and you 5'6", because you don't drop down about 4 inches. All right, and so it's important to keep this in mind. Now, how do we keep this? Is there a way to prevent some of this? Yes. How? Stretching, keeping yourself limber, exercising, eating good food. It's not going to eliminate that, but it will what? Assist. It will help.
This is something, because if you notice how I'm sitting you talking about hunchback, mm-hmm. I'm comfortable like this here. Mm-hmm. And then like today, I call Barbara every night to put me in the bed, help me get in the bed. She was over here today. She said, you know what? Let's put the brace on and see if you can get in the bed. So I put the brace on, stood up, turned around, sat down on the bed. So the aide that was here, she says, you have a therapist. You know, that's what she called my sister Barbara.
Right.
So now, like I said, now I got the brace on. She said, so when you get in the bed, just take off the shoe, and if you can, sleep in the brace.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I said, Barbara, you know what? I'm gonna try that.
All right.
So then when I get up in the morning, she said, just take the shoe and slip it back on and go ahead and do what you gotta do. I said, you know what? I'm gonna try that. But now I know I can get in the bed as long as I got the brace on because this supports the bad leg.
Exactly.
That's why they gave me the brace to support the bad leg.
Now look at what he says here. He says, and the grinders cease. Why are the grinders ceasing? Because they're few. What's he talking about?
Them teeth.
Them teeth. Right? You used to be able to get that steak, man, and you would have that steak. You just cut a chunk of that off, and when you get them spare ribs, and you would just bite. Now you got to kind of put it in the right spot, so that the teeth can the proper teeth can get to it. But now what do we do to avoid this? Take care of your oral health, and sometimes no matter what you do, they still gonna come out. And if you're fortunate enough, you got a dental plan, you got some Medicare, Medicaid, or whatever the case may be, you go on and we can get. We're living in a little bit of a more modern day. We ain't got to put wood in our mouth like they had to do back in the day. They had to put old wood pieces of tree limbs in their mouth so they can bite on some of that stuff. I don't know if y'all know that who was it? George Washington used to have his false teeth were made of wood.
That's what they said.
And so that's what they did. But the grinders, the teeth, they start falling out. Why? Because your body is starting to break down. And you just want to continue to pray and ask God to allow this to happen gracefully. And he says, and those that look out the window be darkened. What are those that look out the window? He's back on the what? On the eyes. All right, you look out the window and it's like, is it nighttime? No, it's not evening. It's still day. You just, you're not seeing all the light that you could see. And so you can see Solomon, once again, he's making fun of this to a certain degree, but he's being very accurate. Look what he says in verse 4. The doors shall be shut in the street when the sound of the grinders is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of a bird. Now, what is he saying? The doors shall be shut. I mean, you're not able to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm trying. What'd you say? Huh? That become part of the vocabulary as you get old. Or, you know what you do? A lot of times people get old, they just sit there and go, they just nod. They ain't hearing nothing. They just nodding. Just saying, yeah. Not really hearing anything, but don't want to keep having to say, what'd you say? Having people repeat it. Now, I done seen it, and I done been there a couple of times. Well, somebody says something, I'm like, I don't know what they're saying, but if it's important, I'll get back to it. But when it gets low, sometimes we help yourself. Don't play your music so loud. Don't listen to the TV so loud. Just get your ears used to hearing softer sounds. Little things that you can do, but when it's all said and done, ain't too much you can do. And if you absolutely need to, you can get hearing aids. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Just like you get glasses for your eyes, you can get assistance for your ears. And then he goes on and he says, and shall rise up at the voice of a bird. Now, wait a minute. You can't really hear, but when you're sleeping, if you hear any kind of disturbance, what happens? You wake up. You don't sleep like you used to. Now, I have to be honest. When back in the day, I could sleep through a hurricane, earthquake. Nothing woke me up. I was out. And my wife said I still sleep like that. She goes, you can sleep through anything. It don't matter. It can be nighttime, daytime, on the train, on the plane. It don't matter. I'm out. And when I'm out, I'm asleep. Don't nothing. But you're going to have those times, and I guess I have that yet to come, when all of a sudden your good sleeping ability is gone. You wake up at pretty much anything. And some people, I have a guy on my job, he talks about how he always wakes up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, he can't go back to sleep.
Oh,
You know, and I'm like, well, I tell him, I said, well, I feel bad for you. I said, I haven't got. I said, I'm probably on my way there, but I have not gotten there yet. Because if I sit down and I'm like, I'll sit down and try to watch a show at after like 9 o'clock. If it ain't really good, I'm out. I am out like a light. All right. And so the ability to get good rest is affected by us getting older. All right. And all the daughters of music shall be brought low. That means you can't really hear all the things that you would like to hear. So when the daughters of music are playing the music, what are you saying? Turn the music up. Why? Because you can't hear it. Okay.
oh, we love to dance.
It froze.
That's it. Try to get
frozen. He's frozen, right, everybody?
Huh?
No.
No. I think you're frozen, Haywood.
Right.
Yeah, you're the one that's
Froze.
Yeah, you're froze, Hayward.
all right. So hopefully you come back, brother. All right. Look at verse 5. Also, when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be in the way. Now, what does this mean? Afraid of heights. All of a sudden, your ability to have fear. Why are you afraid of heights? Because you're worried about what? Falling. You know, what's the old saying? I've fallen and I can't get up.
And get up.
Right? And so as you get older, that can also become an issue where you're worried about falling. And once again, that is a major thing. That's something that our statistics say when it comes to old age, that is one of the most common things where injuries occur. And so what do you have to do? Once again, trying to stay as active as possible, trying to be as limber and having the ability to join. All right.
Hey there.
I just got kicked off.
You back on.
Frozen.
You
And
back
came
on.
back on. Yeah.
You back on. Can you hear us, Haywood?
Yes.
Yes.
I can now.
All right. So, yeah, we saw you get frozen, and so we figured you were gonna have to drop and come back.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. So, and we're just talking about right now the ability of being stable. And Solomon is laughing and giggling at the fact that you're going to be afraid of anything high because you're worried about falling. And then he goes on and he says, and the almond tree shall flourish. Now, what does that mean? The almond tree shall flourish. You ever see an almond tree? When the flowers come out on the almond tree, what color are they?
White.
They're white. They're grayish white. What does that speak of?
Gray hair.
Gray hair. So, the almond tree shall flourish. So all of a sudden now Solomon, and like I said, he's saying this as a tease. He's giggling. You can almost imagine why he's saying it. Look at him. He's walking around looking like an almond tree with all that white hair and the white beard and everything. Right? And so he says the almond tree shall flourish. And the grasshopper shall be a burden. Now, what does that mean? The grasshopper shall be, the grasshopper is just a small little insect that don't really bother nobody. All it does is hop unexpectedly sometimes, but it won't bite you. It won't sting you. It's not poisonous. If you really wanted to, grasshoppers are very nutritious. You can even eat them. They're not a problem insect. But it will bother you. Why? Because your nerves can't handle it anymore. You sitting there looking at the grasshopper, and all of a sudden it goes, poof, it jumps up, and now you all, ooh, nervous. You see that thing jump up like that? Every little thing gets you wound up. You hear sometimes people talk about old people being cranky and cantankerous because everything bothers them. They can't find peace with anything. And so Solomon is laughing at this. You get so cantankerous that even a grasshopper hopping around will cause you to have a nervous breakdown. And it says, and desire fails because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go upon the street. So let's deal with the first one. He said, and desire fails. What is desire? The desire to be romantic. That's what that speaks of. All right. If somebody says, "Well, that ain't happened yet," well, keep on living, I guess. I don't know. There's a whole lot, but our society today, what do we got? They got all kinds of medication for that. You take all this, take this, take that, take this, and you'll be, you'll never lose the desire. But eventually, what does it say? It says because the man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. So that long home speaks of what? You now in the point of death. And who are the mourners? That's the loved ones, your family, the people that care about you. Right? They're now there mourning for you, walking back and forth in the neighborhood, talking about, oh, I remember so and so. He was a good guy. I remember so and so. She was really a nice person. Whatever the case may be, and they're at your funeral talking about all the wonderful things that they remember about you. And verse 6, and he says, and now he throws a whole bunch of stuff in here that speaks about stuff just being broken. Look what he says. Or even the silver cord be loose, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. And he just basically saying, you're going to have a time when all kinds of stuff that used to work stop working. All right, and you can just any and every kind of thing that you did. Your knees, that don't work as well. Your toes, your elbow, your neck, all of this stuff just no longer working the way it used to work. And it speaks to the fact that you're going to get older. And look what he says in verse 7. Then shall the dust return to the earth. And that's what it's all about. You remember the Lord in the days of your youth. You went through the times of having all of the obstacles of going old, getting older. The things begin to not work the way they used to work. Then the dust returns to the earth. All right. It's appointed on the man once to live. Wants to die. It's appointed on man wants to die. And so it's important for us to recognize that. So you're going to return to the earth, and the spirit shall return to the God who gave it. Now, this is one of the few spiritual things that Solomon said in the book of Ecclesiastes. And so that's one of the things that we can chalk up. He finally says something that has to do with heaven and not just on earth. That your spirit will go and return to the God that gave it. All right. The Bible said He made man.
And that's why I know.
Say again.
I underline that one.
Yep.
I underline that one.
All right. That's one good one.
I was reading it.
Yeah, you keep freezing up, Hayward.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, bro. All right. So verse 8.
I know.
Look what he says.
Yeah.
He says, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, all is vanity. Now, he just talked about how your spirit goes back to God, but now he's mentioned vanity of vanities. It's not vain to go back to God. The problem that Solomon have is he's pointing this out, and he's giggling and laughing about this, but he's heartbroken at the fact that he can't live in his stage forever. Why does Solomon want to live in his stage forever? Because he got everything. He's wealthy. He's got power, and he's the king. All right. So, but he's seeing that even with all of that, I'm still getting old. And it's frustrating to him. But what he doesn't have is a hope. He doesn't have a confidence that it is even better. Even with all that money and with all that power, with all that influence you got, with all those women that you got, it's still a better existence in eternity than what you have tried to hold on to here on earth. Go on and get old. Go on and be with the Lord. It's okay, and it's going to be better. That old song said, better off in glory. Hallelujah. And the scripture told us that to live is Christ, but to die is gain. And we should always try to remember that. So he goes vanity, vanity, in verse 8. And then in verse 9, he says, and moreover, because the preacher was wise, and he was wise, he might not have been spiritual, but he was wise. He taught the people knowledge, and he did. He wrote the Proverbs. He wrote Ecclesiastes, which brings a lot of earthly wisdom. And next week we'll get into the Songs of Solomon, which deals with love on earth, and between a husband and a wife. And we'll talk about that, Lord willing, next week when we get into that. All right. And so he taught the people knowledge. Yea, he gave good heed and sought out. He went out and looked for information that he could give. And set in order many proverbs, which he did. Verse 10, the preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth. So he's looking for things that were upright and things that were true. And he did. He brought a lot of upright things, decent things that you should do here on earth, and he brought a lot of truth. What did he miss? Spirituality. He missed faith and confidence in God. But when it comes to just living here on earth, he brought a lot of truth, a lot of things, practical things that you should be able to keep in mind. But he still needed to add, and that's why we did this when we went through the book, what still is missing. It's not wrong, just a little incomplete. All right, verse 11. The words of the wise are as goads and as nails. That goads and nails speak of things that will fasten things together, help things to stay connected. Right? And that is what wisdom and words of truth will help you do here on earth. Fastened by the masters of assembly, knowing how to put things together. That's an important thing. You ever buy one of those pieces of furniture that you got to put together? Knowing how to put those things together is an art form, and you got to figure it out. Because if you don't figure it out, it ain't gonna go together right. Because a lot of times there's only one way to put it together, and you got to follow the instructions. But you got to master the assembly. And so what he's saying is, I'm trying to find how to assemble the things here on earth, and he tried to supply that information. But the issue is, if you only are trying to find instructions for earth, but you don't want to find the person that gave the instructions, that's where you're going to mess up. You need the Lord. Okay? Verse 12. And further, by these, my son, be admonished, of making many books there is no end. In other words, he's saying, now you can learn about stuff until the end of time. There is no end of what you can learn. Find out what you need to learn for what you're trying to do. Okay? And that's one of the things why I think the Bible should be one of the things that everybody learns, because you need the Bible. Now, there's a lot of other stuff you can learn. You can learn science and history. You can learn geometry. You can learn chemistry and physics. All that is fine. But get the word. Get the word. That's what we're going to know. Because there's a lot of other stuff you can learn. There's no end to what else you can learn. But learn God. Jesus says, take my yoke and what? Learn of me.
Learn.
And he says, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. It sure is. But there is no weariness in seeking out God in the spirit. Right? That's in the truth. Verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Now he's going to sum it up. Fear God. Amen. I'll check that. Keep his commandments. That is correct. For this is the whole duty of man. And I would say, Solomon, that's a correct thing. Yes. But then he keeps going. Look at verse 14. For God shall bring every work into judgment. Yes, he will. And every secret thing, not just the things you remember, everything, things that you didn't think nobody else knew about, every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil.
Evil.
All right? And that's true. But what's missing? God is also offering what?
Salvation.
Salvation.
Salvation. Yes.
That's the part. So what he's saying here is not wrong. It's not incorrect. It's just incomplete. Yes, God's going to judge. Yes, God is going to check out every secret thing. God's going to check whether you did good or evil, but he's also going to offer salvation.
Salvation.
Right? And that's the piece that we want to add to that. All right, so with that being said, we have completed the book of Ecclesiastes. We thank God for you that have joined us for all of these studies. And I think you will now have a clearer understanding. And by no means make this the last time you read through the book. In your own personal time, just take some time and go through it. You'll be surprised what else, what additional things the Spirit of God will show you, adding to what we have already talked about. All right. Any other comments or questions on what we talked about today?